Hi, welcome back to Meetings with Remarkable People. This is Brad Spurgeon, and this is the fourth episode of my podcast series. And I'm taking a little break from the Colin Wilson interviews that I've been putting up, because today is the anniversary of the birth 107 years ago of David Douglas Duncan, one of the great war photographers of the 20th century. He was much more than a war photographer, in fact. He was also a friend and photographer of Pablo Picasso, of whom he did 8 books of photos. He did all sorts of subjects throughout his life. And you might be asking, well, 107 years old, so what is this anniversary? Well, in fact, it is also this month, January 2023, the 10th anniversary of when I went to meet him and speak to him and did what will be the interview for this podcast. So he was 96 years old at the time. It was early January. In a few weeks, he would be 97. I discovered that he was a reader of my work as a journalist on Formula One through a Formula One photographer named Paul-Henri Caillet, whose father had been a friend of David Douglas Duncan, as was Paul-Henri. It turned out that David Douglas Duncan read my stories for years and years, and he was working on a book about Formula One, which in fact was a series of photos that he took of the Monaco Grand Prix of 2012 off the television set. The book was published later that year in 2013, and it is still available on Amazon. Now, this, for me, was probably the proudest moment I had as a journalist to Formula One, to discover that such an extraordinary man read my articles and enjoyed them. So I took the first opportunity I could to meet him. He invited me to his place in the south of France. He was there with his wife, and she prepared a wonderful lunch for us. And then during the lunch, I said to him, you've given me an idea for a series of articles in the newspaper. I would love to do a series about unusual, famous, extraordinary people who are fans of Formula One racing. People you might not expect. He said, sure, we can do that anytime you want to. Just let me know. And I said, well, he couldn't read my mind, but he was about to turn 97. And I'm sorry, but I thought I might not have that many chances to do this interview. So I said to him, how about today? Yeah, okay, no problem, he said. So we went about doing it. Now, I want to apologize in advance for a lot of questions and talk about Formula One, especially early in the podcast, the first 12 or so minutes, because I think and imagine there will be lots of people listening to this podcast who don't care about Formula One. But I'm keeping that stuff because I think it is a real revelation of David Douglas Duncan's character in 2 ways. One is his fascination with the sport, with the cars, and with what racing represented. So it opens up another part of his character for those who know lots about him or a little bit about him. But the other reason I'm keeping it has nothing to do with my ego and all the compliments that he pays to me, but I wanted to show what an extraordinarily humble person he was, what a flattering person he was, an exceptional, gentle, generous man who had nothing more to gain out of life, you might say, but who continued to be active. I met him that day. He was completely mobile, although he had a cane. His memory was sharper than mine, both short-term and long-term. And guess what? I was wrong about having to rush this interview. I had the very good fortune to have another 5.5 years of contacts with David Douglas Duncan. We would speak occasionally on the telephone until he died in June 2018 at the age of 102. But you must listen to this podcast. If you have to skip the first 12 or so minutes of Formula One, do so to get to the real meat of this man's extraordinary career through war after war, the founding of India, Palestine, of Picasso's life. It's just an extraordinary historical document. I also kept some of that Formula One stuff in it because there are moments when he's praising me and I get to turn this around and say, wait a minute, what I did has no equivalency to what the kind of thing you did, sacrificing your potentially sacrificing your life out on those wars, etc. Anyway, I hope that you enjoy this episode 4 of Meetings with Remarkable People with David Douglas Duncan. Actually, when did you first become interested in Formula One racing?
Oh, it's back in the late 50s. A friend of mine, Ami Guichard, had a book in Lausanne, Switzerland called Automobile Year. Oh, yeah. That was the definitive book at that time, as far as I know, who were devoted to, that's where I met Bernard Caillet. Oh, that's saying it was through him.
Okay.
But that by accident, because actually, you mentioned Nobar earlier. I'd come back from Russia in my Mercedes. I had a 300 SL Mercedes. Mm-hmm. And there was a fabulous guy who was the head of press at Daimler-Benz in Stuttgart. And he introduced me to Ami. And Ami said, well, in turn, you're looking for a book publisher, for a book printer for your book on the Kremlin. I'd come back from Russia, the Kremlin. I photographed inside the Kremlin for about 3 years.
Whoa.
All the treasures.
Oh, really?
So he, in turn, introduced me to his printer in Lausanne. Then I learned about his interest in Formula One racing, Ami Guichard. Yeah, special. But beyond that, it was very casual because I had a 56 black 300 cell, but I drove it very casually. I drove as an amateur. I wasn't a professional driver.
So did you watch Formula One?
No.
No.
I've never. I actually attended a Formula One race in my life.
Yeah.
I watched in the early days. I heard by radio, then by television. I watched television.
Well, what's interesting, I think, is that Formula One really is a television sport in a way.
You mentioned that in your text.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And
because the way is, EchoStone apparently puts cameras everywhere, and they're high-tech cameras. Their cameras are very, very good. They can zoom in. Cameras on the cars. Total coverage.
Is there in photography? Is there a kind of a similar phenomenon where a subject is made out of photography? It's sort of. Not many people would know about Formula One. Not many people would watch Formula One if it was not for television. Is there a subject with?
No. First, it's hard to get to the tracks.
Yeah.
It's expensive.
Yeah.
And you're talking about. No, I agree with you that it would have a very limited audience without television.
Yeah.
It'd be a local affair.
Yeah.
But the way it is now, it's a world. I understand it's, after football, it's the biggest watched sports event in the world.
But with photography, is there like something made by photography? A media experience that people wouldn't really know about if it wasn't photography. That it wasn't.
I don't think about it photography. I think about these guys are risking their lives at tremendous speed.
Yeah.
And thanks to some of the safety precautions, like Niki Lauda, Jesus.
Yeah.
The poor bastard, burned terribly up at mountain. It was up in Germany.
Yeah, at Nürburgring. Nürburgring.
Yeah. You see him still. His face was rebuilt after that, but so many were killed on the track in the early days.
You were involved in so many wars.
I was a life photographer. That was a Marine during World War II. So that was my job. That was history.
But do you tie in? Is there something
similar?
Yeah, that
Damn
attracts
right.
you. Yeah.
Oh, very much so. I say that it's like between war and bullfighting. The terrible, uptight. Dominique, this rather slender little guy, great toreador, could kill a 2,000-pound bull just with a twist of his, knowing where to plant the sword. Well, that's technique, because the bull outweighed him by 100 to 1, almost 1,500 to 1. So to imagine, what I don't understand, I just don't understand how a guy like Schumacher, he's 44, I think now, 40,
yes,
40,
yes,
40,
this,
44,
on the 3rd
40,
of January.
44, 45.
44.
He's gone from manual shifting a car, throttle control of the car. He's gone to electronic control of a car. So it's all on the dashboard. It's all on the steering wheel now. That's amazing. Yeah. And to watch, as you explained, I followed your stories for years. That's going Monte Carlo from 60 kilometers to 200 in a matter of just just half a minute, maybe. Unbelievable. All controlled by the steering wheel mechanism. How I just don't understand how a person can think at that speed. Yeah. To think at that speed.
Yeah.
This is not amateur. Now, this is life and death. If they make a mistake, they'll kill the guys next to themselves. They'll kill themselves. It's just extraordinary.
Yeah.
What's happening in front of your eyes? But speaking of Schumacher, I forget what it was last year. He went straight into a wall. The camera's behind him. White uniform. Hops out of the car, undamaged.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
That speaks to what they put in the cockpit of the car.
Yeah. And how would you associate the similarities between the war situation and the Formula One thing? What's the association?
In photography?
In photography?
Well, photography.
But also
I've never shot on a track. I've never actually attended a race.
Yeah.
I made a book about the Grand Prix in Monte Carlo this year, as last year now, 2012. But I shot off the screen of a television set in the hotel in Aix-en-Provence. But one thing is very important. For me, there were 2 hours on the screen. There were 2 hours of reality. With my professional abilities, I focused on the screen. But in the instant that I saw what I wanted, I fired. I missed many shots for sure. Your actions are too slow. But in many places, I thought I was very lucky, very successful, that I was able to combine there's a place where Grosjean is tried to take out Schumacher on the first turn at Monte Carlo. Here he is sitting there in his car, a Lotus, aimed backward. The marshals have come over the wall and are getting him off the track. At the same time, Weber has made the first circuit of the whole track in 1 minute and about 30 seconds. And visually what happened was that the marshals, 10 of them, pushed the car out of the way, looked like a scene in a ballet. They're graceful beyond words. Grosjean, you can't even see him. He's sitting in his car, aiming backward. But in that instant, that flash of a second, Weber in Red Bull has come right under, in principle, under my camera, and I combined the two. So this flash of a very distinctive Red Bull car is in the foreground, screaming by the car, as you said, like demons, going past a wreck. But it combines the whole thing, the ballet of the marshals, the terrific speed, and the beauty of the car. And the car is just a blur, but you know which car it is, because Red Bull is a very distinctive car. That lovely yellow and deep red and deep blue, beautiful. And so you know this is Weber. But this, I come back to photography. My luck was that in the instant I was watching the television set, watching Grosjean in his stuck car, Weber flashed past, but I fired that in that fraction of a second, and I got it.
Yeah.
I got it.
Yeah.
And that's it. It was only preserved by my eye. In that thousandth of a second, I got it.
Yeah.
I missed many shots. But that shot to me is so dramatic, so beautiful, and so evocative, danger. And the thing that's incredible, he's going by to maybe 200 within 3 meters of 10 men. They don't look at the car. They're so trained. And you explained in some of your copy, they go by so fast. They drain the oxygen out of the helmet of the marshal. The ground is shaking like an earthquake underfoot. They still don't look around. They simply do their job. Boy, that's professionalism for nothing.
It's like, yes.
And they do it for nothing.
Yes.
These guys are volunteers.
It's a little bit like war, I guess.
Pardon me?
A bit like war, the battlefield.
Very much so. One mistake, you've had it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, time and again. I kept off. But war is different, though. War is national involvement, involuntary. These racing guys are doing it voluntary. They're out there. They're out there. They're doing it for the fun of it, as Schumacher explains. You know, Jesus, we come every week, as you said, for the fun of it. As he told you.
You know,
a bit crazy, but we are a bit crazy, and we don't think that the your copy, Brad, it helped me so much in my effort to make a book out of this Grand Prix in Monte Carlo, because you explained that it's a voluntary act on the part of the drivers, but they do it for the kind of crazy fun of it.
Yeah.
That's why they're there.
Yeah. But not foolhardy. It's not foolhardy. It's controlled.
No. Yeah.
Yeah.
Look, the idea of racing at that speed and in principle trusting the other drivers to know what the hell they're doing, that they are driving with the same care that you're, but they're within inches of each other.
Yeah.
It's just amazing at that speed.
Yeah.
With all the uncertainties.
Yeah.
And then in the rain, heaven, can you imagine that?
With no vision.
I've never understood how you can explain, they have no windshield. This is the rain is, what's the aerodynamics of rain?
The thing is that they've got the
They
visor.
They wear their helmet.
They've got the visor on the helmet.
Yeah.
And they've got tear-offs. They've got these thin plastic things, so they can pull it off when they can't. If it's muddy, they pull it off, and there's another one. And pull it off, and there's a tiny little windshield type of thing, just above like this to a little bit.
I see.
In our first contact by email, you compared what I'm doing covering this with your experience with Picasso, covering as a story. Can you elucidate that?
The relationship of the two?
Yeah.
Well, first place is not similar, because you went to Formula One knowing exactly what you're doing. I went to Picasso knowing nothing. I hadn't the faintest idea of his type of painting. I was trained as an archaeologist in the University of Arizona and marine zoology, and nothing to do except my personal interest in principally medieval and 12th, 14th century art. That was just a personal interest. But Picasso was just a name. And in our profession, as I was a life photographer, it's interesting. I was in Istanbul in 1947, working with the Turkish army on the Russian frontier. And Capa was there. Bob Capa, the famous war photographer, a life photographer, Spanish war photographer. Oh, he said, you live in Italy, and sometime you go through south of France, going different place for different stories. Go say hello to my friend Picasso. That's true. They were very good friends, very respect each other. Because Capa covered the Spanish Civil War, which is very close to Picasso, against the General Franco. That was 1947. 9 years later, I was going through from my home in Rome to photograph the Berbers in the Atlas Mountains of Morocco. I was doing a story in the Muslim world at that time. So I said, geez, Capa once said, go say hello to Picasso. So by chance, through a friend, my friend in Mercedes, had a daughter at a hotel here in Cannes, where I live. I live near Cannes, south coast of France. And she said, nobody gives away Picasso's telephone number, nobody. But she knew it. And because my friends were Daimler-Benz, she gave me the number, and I called. And I started in Spanish. I speak Spanish modestly. And a girl answered the telephone and says, come speak in English. I'm Jacqueline Rock at that time, who became Mrs. Jacqueline Picasso. Your friend of Capa? Yep. Oh, wait a minute. Come now. I told me exactly, now.
Who said that? She did?
Now, here in Jacqueline Picasso.
She said that.
So I went up. She told me how to get there. I went up. She was dressed all in black. Scarf, sweater, pants. Tiny, about 5 feet tall. Took me about 1 word. They call it Villa La California, on the outskirts of Cannes. Into the house, upstairs. Nothing but crates, paintings, sculpture, drawings all over the place. Still not a word. It was a Victorian house. Upstairs, through a sitting room, with a sketch of herself. In the bathroom. Here's Picasso in the bathtub. I'd brought him a ring from Afghanistan. I said, here, there's a carnelian carved with an image I thought looked like a Picasso, just in my ignorance. I gave it to him, then asked his permission to go back to my car to get a camera. I did go back, got the camera, and photographed it. That was the first thing. But interesting enough, he looked at this ring, which had an image of a rooster carved out the time of Christ, and he said, I wonder what he used. Picasso, I wonder what that artist 2,000 years before used to carve the stone. Totally Picasso.
It was that old. The ring was that old.
Yeah, it's 2,000 years old. I gave it to my donation. University of Texas out there now. Interesting enough. I also gave them, life is very strange. I'd had Leica in Wetzlar, Germany, make 4 special Leicas called M3D 1, 2, 3, and 4. Very silent, very tough, very special. Each one had an engraved M1, 2, 3, 4, M3D, 3 for my name, 3 David Douglas Duncan, 3 Ds.
Oh, crap, yes. Oh,
Well,
really?
it just so happened. Have you heard about that?
No.
You're sitting down, and I see you now, in front of me now. On the 27th of November, that's 6 weeks ago, M3D number 2, which I had given to a Japanese friend in Tokyo years ago, and when he died, he gave it to his son, and he'd called me. Hiromitsu said, David, there's a chap who wants to buy my camera. I said, sell it. Your mother's not well. Sell the camera. It was sold. It's a camera. I gave it away. It was sold in auction, 27th of November, $2,186,000, and $2 million. Yes. To a collector in China, in Hong Kong. Yeah. Yeah, it's the highest price ever made for a production camera ever in the world. Now, in my donation to Texas, there's M3D number 1. It's insured now for $3 million. But
as a result of that?
But the result of that, it's very awkward, because when the auction owner gallery in Vienna went website, he didn't explain that I'd given the camera away. It was no longer my camera, which is marvelous for publicity, except for one thing. I live on the south coast of France, between Nice, where there's a mafia from Corsica, Marseille had a gangster-ridden, the Albanian gangsters from Eastern Europe. I've been so worried that kidnappers won't kidnap my wife and hold her for ransom. Here's this rich bastard up in the hills above Cannes. They know I'm well known in the area because of my work with Picasso. But luckily, I've not made it any kind of a publicity out of it. But the risk is still there, because I get friends, telephone calls all over the world. You can be very sure that the guys on the other side of the black spectrum have heard of that news also. So that's it's a very tricky.
But you don't actually have any of this. Oh no, but yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
It's wonderful about a camera selling for that kind of money.
Yeah.
But not being my camera.
Yeah.
But people think it was my camera.
Right.
It's a high risk situation.
Yes.
But anyway, it's a strange world we live in. Yours, there's all kinds of things that you've told me about your music, films.
But comparing Picasso and doing Picasso and doing all these pictures and stuff with the Formula One thing, what was because you were comparing this.
Well, I didn't think of that.
Well, you talked about how it was, you know what it's like to cover an internationally recognized icon.
That's for you.
Yeah.
For you.
But you compared it with the Picasso.
Absolutely, yes, for you.
Yeah.
Because actually, I think I have a reasonably good memory. I shocked you by referring to a story of yours I'd read about Monte Carlo, of the cars going up the hill at tremendous speed.
It was 12
the
years
risk
old.
involved.
It was 12 years old.
It was a story from 12 years ago. So you have a very good audience, a very dedicated reading audience. Yes. So that I was.
That was a humbling experience for me. That was a humbling experience for me. I said, I have a responsibility.
The fact that, but I've never understood, as I've told you, that you can cover one race and write two pages in the Herald Tribune.
I don't understand
different
it.
subject.
I don't understand
it. That's pretty wild. Because I've been working on that book from Monte Carlo for 5 months now.
Yeah.
It's only 48 pages. You do 2 pages every week when the race is on. And each story is different.
Yeah.
And you write to the space. I can't imagine being able to have an available vocabulary to describe everything from the race itself to the type of people who sponsor the race, what the engines are like, the problems of the tires. In the case of here in Monte Carlo, the women who did the catering for the different teams, each one is so different. But to hold it and not reveal the fact, and then interview the either the race car drivers or the engineers or whoever it is, to make it informative enough to hold their respect and their attention. You're not just some guy asking funny questions. You're asking very basically trade-oriented questions, which you can then put back into the phrase of journalism, so everybody can read it and understand it. It's not technical. It's technical up to a point, but it's also informative for the general public.
Yeah.
I salute you profoundly. I tell you.
Thank you. But that's nothing compared to sitting in a foxhole in Korea.
Well, that's something else. That's something I didn't understand ever. By the time I got to, I was in World War II as a Marine, but by the time Vietnam came around, I was in my 50s, early 50s, and living the same life as an early Marine. I could never understand, ever, and I still don't understand. Like going into a dangerous area to have a young guy, 18 years old, hardly enough to shave, killed right beside me, the innocence of the guy, and myself, 30 years older, more, with all my failings and all my mistakes in life, my lack of let's call it protective, godly qualities. I don't get hit. I've been hit very casually over the years. I've been very lucky. And this young kid killed right beside me. I don't get it. You talk about it. And I see these guys praying all the time. I've never prayed in my life, ever. I always depend on it. No, it's true. I believed in luck, but more than beyond luck. I was born into a family where faith was strong, but not church faith. It's something else. Faith. Maybe it wasn't misplaced because I'm 97 now, so I'm a very lucky guy. And I've taken some hits here and there, but I've been most damaged carrying him. He's with us now. My little Norwich Terrier, put him to bed. I broke my hip turning off the lamp. More damaging. I've been nicked a couple of times, but he put me out of business. So that's life is a very strange adventure, as you know.
Did you get hit, wounded, or anything?
Pardon me?
Did you get hit, wounded?
I hit minor. Yeah, I got hit in the arm and the leg. I was even shot by my brother when I was a kid in Kansas City with a .22 rifle, fired accidentally. But yeah, sure.
So, what attracts you to Formula One? What interests you in Formula One? I mean, is there
first the beauty of it? The beauty. It's actually inherent danger, of course, but the beauty of these lethal machines side by side, and then the astonishing ability of the pilots to go through whether it's the mist and the dust down in Abu Dhabi or the rain up at Silverstone, or it always rains in Korea apparently, so that it's amazing. It's amazing.
You're best known in terms of portraits. You're best known for Picasso.
Not at all.
No?
Well, best known, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
The best portrait I ever made in my life was a German Shepherd called Tor, right in this house, right in front of the wall, right down there. I'll show you, it's down below, okay. Tor.
But did you? I think I saw it. I think I saw
Pardon?
it. Yeah. I saw the portrait. I think. Yeah.
Yeah, you're downstairs,
yeah.
Tor.
But you also did some. You met Gandhi, and you did portraits of many other.
I met Gandhi because I was there. People ask me, "Have you ever been to India?" I said, "Yes." When the first day, the 15th of August, 1947, when Lord Mountbatten was the last Viceroy of India. Yeah, sure. And Gandhi was a strange guy. As this simplistic matter, but they were said out there, nobody knows what it cost to provide the simple life of Mahatma Gandhi. Nobody. He traveled on a train by himself, and Mountbatten said, "Look, you want to get a shot at Gandhi? He's coming tomorrow." So he had a press one of the great kind of Campbell Johnson was his press officer. He'd say, "We've set up for you. You have one shot." So Campbell Johnson called and said, "Okay, Gandhi's here. We're in the Viceroyal Palace up in Delhi." I walked in. Here's elegant Mountbatten, and sitting in an overstuffed chair is Gandhi and his dhoti and his kind of sheet, most unappreciative. The fact I should photograph him in the surroundings of the Viceroyal of the Viceroyal Palace up in New Delhi, but I didn't know him at that one time. Jinnah was my favorite. Jinnah was really a tough guy who held Muhammad Ali Jinnah, who was the father, nobody heard it. Jinnah was the father of Pakistan.
Oh, yes.
Which the day before, on the 14th of August, 1947.
Okay.
But Jinnah, elegant, severe man, fighting for not only Pakistan, which came out of the middle divided. It became Bangladesh. There was East and West Pakistan. East Pakistan is now Bangladesh. But the failure of Jinnah would not be able to get the tie between Pakistan and Kashmir. And the population of Kashmir is Mohammedan, the Muslim. The majority are Muslim. But probably because Srinagar, the capital of Kashmir, was the winter resort for many of the British mandate officials. They gave it to India, which is a disaster. No, I've been involved with history all over the place.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah. What's your sense?
Palestine.
Yeah.
Favorite?
What's your sense of Formula One in the place of history?
Formula One?
Yeah. How does it fit?
It's a binding force now. It's international. It's wonderful. It's wonderful because automobiles are, now that China's coming in, the economy in India and Brazil has picked up. I mean, the major economy now are not American anymore. They're Asian and South American. God, my ignorance, I didn't know until just a few months ago that Brazil itself, is bigger than the United States.
I didn't know that.
No, bigger than the United States. And they're fighting in now. We're the 5th of January 2013. There's fighting in Mali, northern Mali now.
Yeah.
Northern Mali is bigger than France. Can you imagine trying to control this place? You have these guys come in from the Congo and other places, and the wild men, the fanatics. It's heartbreaking. I mean, for me, personally, for all of its merits, the great cathedrals, the great art, the great music, one of the disasters of mankind is religion, the fanaticism of religion. There have been more people killed for religion than all the wars of forever, today in Mali. I thought about that because in Mali, the Al-Jassara coming in from all the nut of the Muslim world. They're destroying it in Timbuktu. Traditional sculpture there, imagery there, go back 1,000 years.
Yeah.
It's just heartbreaking.
Yeah. As I mentioned,
but I'm saying the Formula One, though,
yeah,
is a unifying force for sure. And thanks to television, it is understood and viewed, and the danger, the thrill, the beauty is you write about it every week, every 2 weeks when you're on the road like that. So you're dealing with you're dealing with me. I sit here in the south of France, following your copy for years, so that you put an understanding into my awareness of something I knew nothing about except visually. I just visualized, I was very excited. But thanks to you and your friend, Paul-Henri Caillet over here in the south of France, I can understand just blurred images become men driving these lethal automobiles. That's great. That's great.
Well, we have something else in common a little bit, but it goes totally two different ways. As I said to you, I was involved, I was present at the age of 20 in the revolution in Iran.
Oh.
And I said to myself, after that, I said, I'm never going back to a country with revolution or war. I don't want to be anywhere near such a thing.
Well, this was my business, though. That wasn't your business. My business was to go to places that.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Why did you go back? Why did you keep
That's my
going?
business.
It's
what? My profession.
Yeah. But
I was a life photographer for 10 years.
Yeah.
My business, and then
but
I worked on contract.
But you could have changed. You could have changed. You could have done something else. Why did you want to? Did you want?
That was the news of the world. You follow racing, I follow and music. I follow the news,
Yeah.
and I still try to follow the news. I try it very closely.
Yeah.
No,
So it was purely as a
I was involved in Palestine. You know, the heartbreak for me is, you mentioned Iran.
Mm-hmm.
After I left the Marines in 46, I wanted to stay in the Marines. I was very happy. I loved that life. Then I thought maybe the Foreign Legion here in France. There's my world. I like the kind of men there very much. In that world, especially the Marine Corps, you go into combat, similar training, similar responsibilities. You knew that the guy next to you would get you out if you got hit. They'd make an effort to drag you out, whether you're dead or alive. They'd drag you back out. That wouldn't be true in many businesses in the world today. That type of comradeship was terrific. But going back to Iran, which you mentioned, after I left the Marines in early 46, my first job was Iran, because the Russians were threatening to come down from Azerbaijan to the Persian Gulf oil field. And the Life magazine photographers at that time, who had worked abroad in the war, World War II, their wives had all said, look, stay home for a while. We just can't stand this business of being separated, or you go back to war. Well, I was single. I thought it was great. So I was in uniform on a Saturday. I was on a plane on Monday heading for Iran. Took 3 days to get there. Malta, then someplace down North Africa, then Cairo, I think, and then down to Tehran. But there's a guy named Mossadegh, Mohammed Mossadegh, who's the leader of the Tudeh Party, which is the communist opposition to the Shah. Charming man. In fact, I photographed him. I remember on the back of one of my prints, I said, if I could ever adopt him as a grandfather, that's Mossadegh. That's my boy. And I was welcomed there at the time. And then he was overthrown. And the guy named Archie Roosevelt, the cousin of Theodore Roosevelt, Franklin Roosevelt, was a CIA agent who'd come down from Beirut. And Archie Roosevelt was sitting in the basement of the American Embassy in Tehran, leading opposition forces to overthrow Mossadegh, to bring the Shah back. That all tied together. Mm-hmm. So that's when the hatred, then they captured, I think, 400 Americans at the embassy and locked them up. And when Jimmy Carter was president, they tried to release them. The plane crashed in southern Iran. One disaster after another. But so I've been involved with Iran. In fact, my first story was not with Mossadegh and the political side, and then because there were very few visitors to Iran at that time, the American ambassador invited me to a dinner for the few foreigners in town, the embassy, and next to me was a very tall, slender, hawk-nosed guy. I started talking to him. He was Malik Mansour Qashqai. He was one of the princes, tribal princes of the great migratory tribe, the Qashqai tribe in Iran. I said, geez, you migrate? Yeah, sure, we migrate from the south to north. Now, this is springtime. This is about March of 46. We're starting this spring migration from the south near Shiraz up to Persepolis up in the north. What an idea. Do you think I could join you? He called his brother Nasser Khan Qashqai, who was the Han, the prince of all the Qashqai. So I was with him for 3 months. I made the migration from southern to central Iran. Now the irony is, my best friend Khosrow, the youngest brother, and I were the same age. And I gave him a ring I'd gotten off Peru before the war. I'd been game fishing off Peru, an Incan god of good luck, and I gave it to him. And his mother, Bibi, the mother of the four brothers, gave me in turn carpets from the family prayer rugs. They're downstairs in my home here now. But Jorge lost his luck. He tried to go back in to confront the revolutionary leaders. They captured him and hanged him in Shiraz. They had him in the main square of Shiraz. Yeah. Now, the final irony today, 2013, on many of the streets of the Western world, you see SUV cars, Nissan, Qashqai, named for my tribe. Really? And not many people know where that name came from. And we're sitting in my home here in the south of France. Downstairs are photographs of the Qashqai tribe, and I'll show you as we go downstairs. So that it's all a very personal thing about the Qashqai.
I have just two questions left. One is, why do you think you and Picasso got along?
Pardon me?
Why do you think you and Picasso got along? Why were you friends? Why do you think,
First, I'm not a painter. No, first I'm not an art dealer. I'm not an art museum person. I'm just a guy. I speak lousy Spanish, and we spoke Spanish together.
Is that what you spoke together, with Spanish?
Spanish, yeah. And he was so smart, he understood it. So we got along for 17 years. But most of the time, I didn't speak for him. I was I didn't speak for him. Sometimes days would go, we didn't exchange 50 words. He'd paint and I'd photograph. Not one word. I'd be damn sure. And more than that, I never touched a thing in that house. I never moved anything. Because in the way of moving a painting, moving a dish, nothing. I touched nothing. And but I think he respected the type of way I earned my living too, because I was a loner, very much a loner. I'd quit my job at Life magazine. And in fact, after a story, I'd gone in 1955 to the most wonderful, desert, remote, unknown, friendly country in the world, Afghanistan. Can you imagine say that today? They kill them on sight. I'd gone there in the spring of 1955. There was nobody there, nobody. And the Angus Ward, the American ambassador, was a very taciturn sort of a fellow. And he said that he was going to make a tour of northern and western Afghanistan. He'd come from Nairobi. He'd had a kind of a super SUV made for a mobile, heavy-duty truck, could go anywhere in the day. And there were no roads in Afghanistan of any consequence. At that time, 55, we traveled about 8 to 15, 20 kilometers an hour for an hour after, with pyramids of dust flying up in the air, then back over the car. There was no rain at that time. So I saw Afghanistan intimately. There were no weapons except ancient muskets. The guys were hunters at that time. Hospitable, you can't imagine. I remember in Herat. No, north up on the way up on the Oxus River up on the north on the Russian frontier. I photographed a shepherd. He said, "I have nothing to give you." He reached out and picked up a rock. Here's a piece of my country. Please, I still have it. A piece of rock from Afghanistan. And if you go there today, the story today, they hate the Americans because you can understand it, because we've gone into a place we did not understand socially, religiously, at any level. And look, when I was in Korea and in World War II, when you saw a Marine or a soldier, you saw his face, you saw his hands. He was in a very simple uniform. That was it. The way they dress now, they're huge helmets and goggles and radios, and there's a man inside someplace. Can you imagine the fright of Afghan children? See these people come in their village, coming through, speaking a language they don't understand. So that there's just a story of 2 or 3 days ago, the Herald Tribune. of a guy who was a security man in Afghanistan. He shot 5 or 6 Americans just because he hated them. He acquired their confidence, and he shot them. It's a different world now. It's a different world. I just regret the fact that Life magazine doesn't exist anymore. I'd love to, because I find the time frame is too short now on television, and it happened too fast. These guys, I used to photograph in a place like Vietnam. I'd carry the film on my body for 2 weeks and finally get it back to New York to Life magazine. Now they carry the cell phone transmitters. They get a satellite, bounce it off a satellite. It's in the Paris Match or Herald Tribune or where it is around the world in seconds. It's in seconds. So that it's a different world.
How long were you in Vietnam for?
Pardon me?
How long were you in Vietnam for? You were in Vietnam for how long?
Oh, Vietnam. I started in Indochina in 1951 first, Indochina. I did it. I tell you why. When I was 51 was the end of the world that had been run by colonial powers. So I wanted to do, and I did it for Life magazine, a story based on the end of the colonial world, and Indochina, Hong Kong, and then Iran, and Egypt, many places. So that Indochina, then again in 53, I came back, and the threat was, the trouble is, Americans always thought that they had to kind of be missionaries for the world, be like Americans, be like the best. We were the best of everything. We were number one, except we weren't number one. We weren't. A misunderstanding. It was a type of ego, national ego, that has been such a burden for so many other people. They have their own culture, their own religion, they have their own everything, their own world. But in 53, the Northerners, the communists, were coming down to take South Indochina at that time. And I went out there and spent months and months from in southern, up as far, even up to Hanoi at that time, went into Laos. I came back to New York with my film. And by chance, the Mr. Luce, who was the boss at Life magazine, was in France. And the managing editor is a very tough guy, Ed Thompson, was on vacation. And Sidney James, the assistant managing editor, was more malleable. And I got a story there, ran for 10 or 12 pages. Indochina all but lost, 53. The fury I faced from the American government. I was persona non grata in France for 1 year. Yes. Wow. And tragically, coming back to Bob Kappa, I'd been working in Germany on the Iron Curtain. And I got a message from New York that, David, your band has been listed. You're not longer persona non grata in Indochina. Would you like to go back? Instantly, I want to go back and show what's happened since I was last there, 54. 6 hours later, a message came back in on the wire. Bob Kappa is in Tokyo. He'd always said he'll never go back to war again. He'll go back one more time. So, David, don't go back. Kappa went back to Indochina on my story in May of 1954. He stepped on a landmine and it killed him. Now he was with the Legion at that time. I operated by myself. There's no way to assume I would have been killed on the same job. We worked differently.
Yeah.
But the point is, Kappa was killed on my job. I was in Egypt when I heard the news, and in Cairo. Kappa was killed on my job. It's horrible.
But you wanted to do the job.
I wanted to go back,
Yeah.
very much so.
Yeah.
And the way I operate, nobody knows. Look, on the battlefield, nobody can predict what's going to happen, that's for sure.
No.
I might have stepped on another landmine or been shot by some guy, or even by your own force someday.
Yeah.
This famous football player, Patton, I think, who was killed out in Afghanistan by his own people, and the American military tried to cover it up. He wasn't killed by the Afghans; he was killed by Americans. Famous American football player, famous, superhero.
Yeah.
He volunteered as a private to go back. So wars, we all know that's unpredictable. But coming at Kappa and Zapata, but with Picasso, we liked each other. You have to remember, it's not ego. I met a hell of a lot of guys in my life too, whether they're Picasso or Marine generals or privates or many people, big game. One of my most personal, great favorites, Michael Lerner. Michael Lerner is a big game fisherman off South America. He and his brothers invented the Lerner shops, medium price women's shops in New York, and he multimillionaire, but he only wanted to do was fish, big game fishing. So that's where I got the ring I gave to Jorge Cascai off Peru, fishing for broadbill swordfish in 1938. So I've been very lucky. I met extraordinary people, and Picasso is among them, surely.
So to finish off this, the idea for doing the
photography?
Yeah, off the television, the Formula One on the television, the Monaco Grand Prix.
That was just a fluke. It was a fluke. I was in Aix-en-Provence, the Roi Rene Hotel, on the 27th of May last year, 2012, watching Formula One, Monte Carlo, the 7th anniversary.
Why were you in the hotel? You had broken your hip?
I broke my hip carrying my little dog Doozy to bed here.
Yeah.
So I was still very handicapped walking. So I was watching
But so you were staying in the hotel instead of staying here because...
No, we'd gone there. We'd gone there because I'm doing another book on of an Irishman named Paddy McKellen. Paddy McKellen is a real estate developer and hotel. He owns the Connaught Hotel and several hotels in London. Billionaire, I understand, who has a love for... He has a vineyard north of Aix-en-Provence, and in that vineyard, called Lacoste, he's installed major works by architects from all over the world and art from all over the world. And so it's a vineyard with art and stage. So for 4 years, I've been photographing there just for the fun of it, to make a Valentine gift for my friends there. So we'd gone back to Aix. It was the Sunday of the race, and I checked on the television. Here's Monte Carlo's 7th anniversary. So sitting on the bed with Doozy beside me, and your Herald Tribune from my guideline at my feet, I photographed the race for 2 hours. But remember, I was watching the race like reality. So within my time frame of shooting, I was photographing reality with my little Coolpix Nikon camera, automatic. I just aimed at the thing and fired. When I saw, sometimes I was too slow, sometimes I got it. I got enough to make the book now that I've shown you the first time at the Formula One of Monte Carlo. And when I finished with it, I had simply about 350 photographs of Monte Carlo Grand Prix. Interesting picture, blurred, but thanks to your background, and thanks to the background of Paul-Henri Caillet, you could identify who's in those cars, what was happening. So I think what I have now is, with pride, I've created one book in the world on Formula One of that type. There's no one's made a book like that. No. Because the fabulous cameramen who work for Bernie Ecclestone all over the track I had the advantage of their cameras, their eye, their timing. They could zoom in on a subject. So I had the advantage of maybe 60 photographers working on one story. And the best of all, Monte Carlo is a family affair. The Prince Albert and his new wife, Charlene, Princess Charlene, received and Weber, this handsome guy who was so courteous, but he looks like a movie actor. He has a beautiful car. The most beautiful car is Red Bull. So when he came up on camera, it was Weber. You knew exactly who was on camera. So I put together a book where, look, I'm not stupid. When I read that the three winners, one within 1,000th of a second of each other, that's extraordinary. And it's on. There it is. The only time it's happened probably ever. That's happened, and I photographed it. So I have, and the Philips people have an excellent. I guess it's a plasma screen television set, so there's no interference of lines on the screen.
Right.
So it's total reality.
Okay.
There's shots there where you see. You can. There's a shot at the end where Weber is singing the national anthem of Australia, and the camera moves in. You can see he has deep chestnut eyes. And I thought, in my ignorance, he hadn't shaved for a couple of days. I thought he had a scar down his right cheek, down chin. Not at all. It's the line from his telephone that's pressed against his face, but maybe it is a scar.
I think it might be the balaclava.
But Paul Henry said it's the line. It's the line from the telephone.
Yeah, within the helmet.
Because it's such he wears such body armor, body protective devices, which didn't happen when Nicky Lauder got burned. He was burned. You know. So
it's kind of a funny thing, isn't it? That you were a guy who spent nearly 100 years traveling around the world to do photos.
Yeah.
And here it was.
Oh,
I've
done a hell of a lot more than that. I mean, I've made a book that I've just luck is really with me. I did a book when I broke my hip with Doozy 3 years ago. And in the daytime, I started shooting digital, the little Nikon Coolpix digital camera of the life in the hospital in the daytime, the nurses, the physiotherapists, the life. But at nighttime, I didn't sleep very much. I kept thinking back to Korea, Vietnam, Picasso, different things. So it became a miniature autobiography, mini little... 30 days in the hospital. Well, for 3 months, 3 years now, I've been driving my wife crazy. We're working on this book. There's so much time. Hopeless. There's a medical story until about March of 2012. It happened. I've been so lucky all my life. I got a call from Japan. Dave's son, Japanese courtesy, Dave's son. The 100th anniversary, salute, 100th anniversary of Nikon camera is coming up. You put the first Nikon lens on Leica for the Korean War 60 years ago. You're considered the godfather of Nikon. We're going to make a huge celebration for the anniversary. I sent that to come down me in my book. They're publishing my book as a worldwide promo for the Nikon camera. It fell in my lap. I changed originally the book was called 30 Days, and then also 30 Days for all there. Now I call it Yesterday. And yesterday, I'll show it down below, it down here. Yesterday, cover shot is a picture of, there's a neat thing called the Nikor Club. Nikor Club has members all over the world. For 1980, the Nikor Club invited me to a picnic, and my friend Mickey, to whom I gave the cameras, later sold at auction for $2 million. I gave him the camera, Mickey, and invited all these guys. Well, he spoke for me. Okay, here's Dave's son. Banzai, 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 Dave's son, for introducing our Nikon to the world. 3,000 cameraman photographed me. That's the cover of the book. I focused on these guys dressed in 1980s, so typical of that time. It's called Yesterday. So Yesterday was my introduction of the Nikon camera, and the camera is being introduced now around the world, and the book. So the book is sold.
I thought you had your broken hip with the Monaco Grand Prix thing. There was no relation with the broken hip.
Pardon me?
I thought your hip, you'd broken your hip when you did the Monaco Grand Prix.
No.
This was 3 years ago.
No, I broke it. I broke it in the. I was sitting in my living room. I broke it that lamp right over there.
Okay.
I was sitting here in this chair where I'm sitting now with Doozy.
Yeah.
And Doozy is at midnight.
Yeah.
He always waits for me to go to bed. He was so sleepy. I got up, holding Doozy to my chest, went over to that lamp right there.
Yeah.
And unfortunately for me, it's a foot switch, not a switch up on the lamp. I kicked off the lamp switch on the floor, fell, and to protect Doozy so I wouldn't crush him, I fell on my right hip and broke my hip, and nearly broke my spine at the same time. So that was sure. So we went from this on a Friday, a local doctor in the hospital near Mougins, and I was there for a month.
My dad broke his hip too, 2 years ago, 85 or so.
Sure.
He was playing tennis.
He's okay now?
Yeah.
Well, I was in the clinic, and I read about, in France alone, in the year before, that 2011, guess how many people broke their hip? 160,000.
Wow.
In France alone. Yeah.
Wow.
And then a week later, I read the Herald Tribune, and of those, 25% are probably failures, the operation.
Oh my God.
I think mine is a semi-failure. I feel more trouble now than it's been a problem.
Yeah.
Many, like Kirk Douglas, he's 1 year younger than I. He's 96 now. He broke 2.
He's still around, huh?
And he's walking beautifully. No problem.
Yeah.
So life is a mystery.
Yeah. Yep.
And then I go over to the University of Nice here. Since I've lost it, I've lost about 30 or 40 pounds. Just nothing overweight at all. Went to an expert there. All the tests. I said, "What's your conclusion?" Guess what he said? This guy's the expert. It's a mystery. So life is a mystery.
Yeah.
I thank you for joining me on episode 4 of Meetings with Remarkable People. That was my meeting with the remarkable David Douglas Duncan. Take a look at his work. And in the meantime, I look forward to joining you again on episode 5. Thank you very much. That was Meetings with Remarkable People, and I'm Brad Spurgeon.